Hi, and welcome to the Dish on Divorce. I'm Jennifer Barkin.
And I'm Leanne Townsend.
Today we have a very special guest named Stacey Mendelson. And Stacey is a divorce coach, but she's not a regular divorce coach. Stacey, what is your practice called?
Lifeline Coaching and Consulting.
And that's an excellent name that you gave your practice, because Stacey is definitely a lifeline for so many. Stacey's clients tend to come from the most high conflict situations that anybody's ever heard of, and maybe she'll tell us a story today. But Stacey, before you were a coach, this is what I find really fascinating. What did you do for a living?
I was a small animal, like dogs and cats, veterinarian for 24 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Big
That's
career
quite a change, yes.
Yeah.
So how do you go from cute little doggies and pussycats to really
High
tough
conflict
divorces?
divorce.
Angry spouses. Yeah, angry adult spouses.
I know. Well, I loved being a veterinarian, but I also loved just as much being a high conflict divorce coach. I myself went through a very high conflict divorce, 4-year battle, and I made a ton of mistakes, but I learned so much. And that is what I knew I had to bring out into the world. So this percolated in my head for a while I was practicing veterinary medicine. I knew I had to help other people. So I decided to go back to school. I became a certified life coach so I would understand how to transmit my knowledge to other people and help them through their battle. And I pivoted. I did a big pivot.
That's amazing. And I have to ask how you got into the high conflict stuff, because that's an area that, a lot of people try to avoid like the plague, and you love it, you said. So how did you end up sort of focusing more on that?
I think that most people who hire a divorce coach are really like they need a lifeline. My people are sinking and they need me to throw them that lifeline. So there was a necessity there, and I had the skill set for it. It's sort of like being an ER doctor. It's like I love putting out fires. I love the idea of being available all the time for my clients.
Wow.
And just helping them. I know, navigate
You are an
it.
angel.
It's a different business model, and it's not for everyone. And it's certainly not what I was taught in coaching school. But I have a divorce concierge service where people can access me most of the time, not always as soon as they need me, but the same day they'll be able to access me to help them put out a fire so that they don't have to get on the phone with their lawyer every single day. The way that I did the whole first year of my divorce cost me 6 figures. I was on the phone every day with the lawyer because it was just bomb after bomb being hurled at me, shenanigan after shenanigan. And I wish I had had a me to talk to.
So high conflict, and we hear this word or the term thrown around quite a lot.
Yeah.
High conflict and narcissist. Those are actually the two terms.
Yes.
So everybody says, oh, there's so much conflict, or there's so much. In your mind, what is a high conflict divorce?
Well, first I'll say a high conflict divorce is usually caused by just one high conflict personality. That is the typical.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, that's the typical dynamic that I see. I don't typically work with that high conflict personality. They don't want to hire me. They're not interested in mind management and me helping them with their communications to their ex. They're, beyond therapy. They're doing it all right. They don't need me. But so it's one high conflict personality where their motivation is punishment over resolution. I think that is exactly the recipe for a high conflict divorce.
I would agree with that. And winning, I think, they want to feel like they've won and made the other person feel less than,
Yes.
That's usually a part of it.
Yeah.
I came from that situation, as you know, and I also work with the high conflict population. And one thing that makes me able to do it is really my situation. I really haven't seen worse.
Than your own situation.
Than my own.
Yeah.
For our viewers, special needs child, father denying the child had any special needs. multiple psychiatric diagnoses, antipsychotic drugs, and on and on and on. And I would have the school, the teachers, the principals as my witnesses, the psychologist, the child psychiatrist, the reports from Toronto Western Hospital, et cetera, and all he would say is, well, mom's making up the whole thing. Mom's making up the whole thing. And it was a game because there was a lot of money on the other side, a lot more than I had. So we're going to throw these crazy shenanigans, as you say, out there to get her to crack, to get her to break, to get her to give up. And I held it together for a long time, but I did give up. So in my own practice, I can deal with the hardest of the hard because I know, like you, my own mistakes.
Right. Yeah.
So are you transparent? Are you very open with your own clients about, I know what this feels like?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Now, it doesn't mean I get to go in the pool with them because then I can't throw them the lifeline that they need. But yeah, I mean, a big part of the reason I can do what I'm doing is because I've had this exact life experience. You know, you're an expert at raising a child with special needs because you had that life experience. I'm an expert at high conflict divorce because of that life experience, and I had all of the elements of it. And I'm able to help clients really shift their perspective of some of these bombs being hurled at them to really neutralize the bombs so that they actually stop even being seen as bombs, so they're not so triggering. In fact, they can be amusing or they can be strategic, like this is a gift of evidence.
But I think, you know, we all seem to be in this high conflict business. I work with a lot of high conflict clients, and, you know, a lot of them end up in that situation where they're calling me because they don't have someone else to call and they're paying my lawyer's rate. And so what I'm wondering is for a listener out there who, you know, is maybe my client or somebody else's, you know, some other lawyer's client who is in this situation, if you were brought in on the matter, what do you do exactly, and how do you help them, you know, manage the situation and then also maybe potentially keep their legal fees down because you're playing a different role from the lawyer?
I love working with the client and the lawyer together. In almost all of my files, especially my concierge clients, I work every meeting, I'm with them, with the lawyer, so I'm that extra set of ears. I keep things very, very tight and streamlined and focused because the client is all over the place.
And half the time they're not listening because they're so stressed. That's what I find hard.
Exactly. So I can manage the day-to-day shenanigans. I know when to say this requires legal intervention. You know, I enable the lawyer to keep doing the lawyering. I do a lot of the hand-holding, the mind management, so that client can be showing up as the perfect client for you as a lawyer, which is my goal. My goal is to have all of my clients be their lawyer's favorite client. Okay, which means
that's a great goal.
It works very well for everybody. It means they pay them and feel good about paying them because we've made an amazing choice for their lawyer, which is one of the things that I help them with. It keeps them from being too taxing for their lawyer. Like, it keeps the drama level down so that the lawyer can focus on the legals and I can focus on the drama and de-escalating that drama with the client. I can't focus on the legals, but I can definitely be part of that team with a lawyer. And I really think that high conflict needs a team.
I agree.
Good, like smart client, good coach, great lawyer, like that amalgamation of gray matter, there's no substitute for it. That is what wins. The other thing I love doing with clients is helping them arm their lawyer to win. So what I mean by that, I really believe that it's not fair to lean so heavily on your lawyer to build your case. Nobody knows the opponent better than the client, right?
True. Yeah, very true.
We know exactly what their pain points are. We know exactly what they're going to do wrong. We know exactly what shenanigans they're going to pull. And it's our job to collect and compile that evidence into a format that's so easy and so compelling for you to be able to use.
No, that's an amazing resource to have because, you know, that fits in with the strategy so much.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I've never actually worked with a coach who's done that. And I think that that's a fabulous.
The lawyers love it.
Yeah.
I make spreadsheets. And I mean, even things like access. And any one of my clients for access, they keep a spreadsheet going. That way they have a very easy chart to identify any events, any aberrant parenting events that happen during access, let's say. And maybe there's a piece of evidence that we attach to it because there was an email or a text sent. It puts everything in one place on one sheet. And it's very compelling.
So it's like a map. So it would be very easy for the lawyer to, this is going on such and such date, check, check, check. This part's right here, check, 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 check.
It's very hard to argue with the chart, I find. The original spreadsheet was my own. I was in a situation where I had a restraining order, or peace bond my ex had, and it was coming due. He had it for 2 years, and I felt this time ticking, it's going to come due, and I didn't feel comfortable not having it. Well, the first hurdle is convincing your own lawyer that you need it, because lawyers really don't want to have to ask for things that are difficult, right? That they're going to have a lot of opposition from.
Right.
So I call my lawyer. The peace bond's coming due. I want it to be renewed. And she says, well, nothing's happened for 2 years. Everything's been fine. He's not communicating with you. Everything's going fine. And I'm like, no, I'm really not comfortable. And that's when I realized I needed to compile the 26 most compelling, egregious events that had happened. That's what I put together. That was the original spreadsheet. Date, event, description, piece of evidence attached to it. It was so big, and it was so many years ago before, we were so internet savvy. I actually took the computer to the law office to show my spreadsheet to the lawyer, and she was like, yeah, I think we need to get this.
Well, and that's because you put evidence together. That's the problem. A lot of, people, it's he said, she said.
Totally.
And there isn't any concrete evidence. And as a lawyer, if you take it into court and it's just one person saying this, the other person saying that, the judge is just going to go.
It's not a good case.
Yeah.
For those high conflict cases, it's one of the things I work hard with the clients and also with the lawyer just to build the strategy. But then I do the grunt work with the client of building that case for the lawyer.
Yeah, because that's what's so important is just the independent evidence. And so it's not just if there's stuff corroborating what the person is saying.
Third party. I help my clients. I have a client right now whose little girl who's only 2.5. She breaks out in hives when she eats foods that she's allergic to. And the ex is not complying with the recommendation from the allergist. So we needed very specific recommendations from the allergist. I helped the client write to the allergist because I'm a doctor. I know exactly how to write to another doctor and give them very direct instruction of what it is that we're looking for so that now there's third party evidence of what should happen here.
So when it's a high conflict divorce, the emotions run wild, right? And you have a phrase that I've stolen from you.
Oh, good.
Okay, I have.
Please do.
And I use it with everybody. So when people come to me and their ex is pulling some sort of, shenanigans, I very calmly say, well, of course he is. Of course she is. And they look at me. I say, well, why would you expect differently? Of course they are.
Right.
And the person steps back and yeah, you're right. It's so simple, but so good.
Yeah.
It really works.
It's that whole idea, it's that concept of the manual, which is a coaching concept. We all have these manuals, which are these instruction guides that we have in our head for all the people in our life. We have it for our kids, we have it for our parents, and we for sure have it for our ex. My ex-husband shouldn't disparage me to the children. And I always say, so that's part of our manual. That would be maybe number 1 in our manual. And number 2 is he shouldn't lie to the children and he shouldn't have his girlfriend sleep over and he should, and you have a manual when you have the word should. Okay, that's the red flag of the manual. And I try to teach my clients to drop their manuals, especially for their exes. I'm working on dropping my manual for my 19-year-old son. It's a daily job, but when you have a manual, that is what makes you triggered. because they don't follow your manual.
Yeah, they don't behave the way you would in that situation. So of course it gets upsetting and you get triggered, but you have to remember, of course they would do that.
Of course they did. Why are you so surprised?
I always say, why shouldn't they?
But does that
they
not-
should do that because they always have done that.
Yeah, past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior.
Exactly.
A personal question, if that's okay.
Of course.
Did you learn that? Because I know where I learned that from. When you're a parent of a special needs child, what you learn very young is all of these baby books and baby manuals, whoever wrote it, it's not working with your kid.
I know.
So you can throw out the manual, right? And this child is individual. They're not marching to that tune.
They're not.
So do you take from that at all?
That's not where I learned about this concept of the manual, but I do definitely subscribe to that for sure. I had a child also with special needs, and I found it really difficult to socialize with all the other parents, with all the kids that were neurotypical. That was, very depressing. And you
depressing, and your kid's like having a tantrum for an hour on the floor, and everybody's staring.
I know, exactly. Yeah, been there, done that. But this concept of the manual for your ex, and then really, I learned about the manual in my life coach education. And realized I have a manual for everybody in my life, but having a manual for your ex is really the worst idea ever because it ties your emotional state to their behavior.
Yeah, which is the worst thing you can do.
That is a very bad combination. That's the part that we have to detach.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I don't know if both of you have experienced this or seen this, but what I find is that the narcissistic, high conflict types of clients tend to work with the narcissistic, high conflict lawyers. Because when I look through my own client base, like I don't have any clients myself that fit that stereotype, but I do have ones on the other side.
Of course.
And it's interesting how they're drawn together like bees to honey.
So one of my favorite lawyers, who ended up being my final lawyer in my case, she said to me, everybody gets the lawyer that they deserve. Eventually, everyone gets the lawyer that they deserve.
Yeah, no, I think that's true.
Yeah, I think, and lawyer matching is such an interesting part of my job that I love. I really, I feel like that's one of my superpowers, is matching the right client with the right lawyer, because every case is so different and nuanced, and I love making that good match. It's the biggest mistake that people make, that I see.
Yeah, I would agree. Retaining the wrong lawyer, I think, for your case or for your personality, I always say if somebody needs a lot of hand-holding, they need a lawyer who is more patient with that. If they don't care about that kind of stuff, then that's not a factor. If they need a pit bull, they need to retain a pit bull, but not every case. You can be a strong advocate and not be that highly argumentative, conflict-oriented pit bull. So, it's I think what you're doing sounds amazing with if you're, advising clients on finding the right fit.
Yes, whatnot. I have a bit of a scientific method for finding.
That science background's coming in handy.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's good to distill things down as best you can so that you get it right, because I love getting a client before they've ever hired a lawyer. That's my favorite time. Even while they're still married is my most favorite time to get a favorite, because then I can help them extract themselves safely if there's safety issues, and get everything waiting in the wings that they might need, such as a lawyer. But often clients come to me with a lawyer attached already, and there's often, if they're finding me, they're having a problem, like their case is not going well. That's why they seek me. And either it's a matter of improving the communication with the lawyer and really making sure that we're all on the same page, and I do help facilitate that, or it's a matter of changing counsel. And usually at that point, counsel's very happy to have them change. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Now, if we have listeners out there who are, say, in an abusive relationship, are you somebody that they could contact to help them with a safety plan?
I do safety plans for a lot of clients. I wouldn't say that I'm a domestic violence expert in any way. I think I'm a pragmatic child-focused person who can use a lot of common sense. I can see the obstacles, I can see where there's danger, and I can help my client decide in advance how they're going to show up for these situations. Because a lot of them are really afraid to call for police intervention if they need it. And I'm really able to change the way they think about those things.
That's so important. Because I know, with victims of abuse, often they don't want to call the police because on the one hand, they want to get the abuser out of the house, but they don't want the criminal charges. And they don't want their children's other parents charged criminally and
Exactly.
all, everything that flows from that.
They don't want the child exposed to the conflict. I went through exactly this. I had some very dangerous behavior toward me. I wasn't with my ex at the time. We were separated. My son was with the ex, and the police came to my house to talk with me. And they said, we're going to go get your son. It was like 11 o'clock or midnight. He was a young teenager. And I said, no. Please wait till tomorrow morning. Like, I don't want you to scare him. And the police officers, and they were excellent, said to me, you don't understand. Like, cases like this can end in a murder-suicide.
Yeah.
Like, we're going now, and you're going to follow us in your van, and we're going to bring your son down, and we're just going to tell him Daddy was sick, and we're going to go get him. And that's what we did.
Yeah, well, because that's the most dangerous time statistically.
Absolutely.
When you're first separating.
But I mean, I wasn't even thinking in that way.
Yeah.
Now I think differently about things.
If you ever need help with safety planning, I can help you out with that.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
sure.
And likewise, because I was a domestic violence crown, so
Yeah.
definitely
I'm
I have a
required-
lot of experience in that.
Yeah, for your
mediators, we
mediation.
have to take it, but we also have to retake it every 2 years, right? So whether it's screening questions, how to screen, to see if people are in danger, safety planning, all of those things.
That's great. Well, I will send them your way.
There you go.
So how do you find with the high conflict, like when I deal with clients who have a high conflict situation, and a spouse who's that way, their spouse usually ends up, hating me.
Yes.
And do you find you get that kind of experience with these people as well?
They don't know about me.
Okay,
I'm
you're lucky. I'm the one who's going to get shot as I go to my car one day.
I'll tell you something interesting. I have clients in the U.S. and those are the cases that sometimes do find out about me. There's, they go through phones and disclosure and visas and everything, and it creates a problem. And I'm sort of at that point now where I think I'm just may stick to Canada only, because the U.S. it's such a wild rodeo family.
Yeah, it's like the Wild West.
It is nuts there. Yeah, it's not ethical.
Yeah, no, even here sometimes it can get that way a little bit, but it's definitely the U.S. is, from what I've seen. It's not that I practice law there, but from what I've seen, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's awful.
Like in so many things, right? The U.S. I find is always more the Wild West in so many areas.
But generally, like, I would never encourage a client to communicate in any way that isn't respectful and fact-based and brief, just about the kids only, logistics.
Did you read about Bill Eddy?
I haven't read it. I guess you
Because
have.
that's his whole
Biff.
thing, right? The Biff, keep it brief, information, factual.
Exactly. I always tell my clients, just all you need to respond is about the logistics, about the child. Now, I would like your opinion on this, because there's lots of controversy about this. Some people feel like you have to actually address accusations that are not true in emails. Do you think that should be addressed?
It's hard. Like I find, I think that if there's something major that you do need to address it, because the next thing that high conflict counsel is throwing those, into court material, and you haven't responded to it, and they'll make the argument that they couldn't even address this, Your Honor. So my view is that you do, with certain parameters around it. You don't have to respond to every single thing, but if there's something significant, you do need to address it. Yeah.
Straight. Yeah. Yes. So I do a lot of the communicating for my clients. Typically what I do is They watch me communicate as them for a while. That's step one. Step two is they do the communication and send it to me for an edit. And step three, they fly solo.
And so do you help a lot of people that, like, when they're in the post-divorce part as well, or is it more just when they're going through divorce?
I tend to be that person that's like in the thick of it, in the trenches of the separation. That, I think, is my role as the kind of divorce coach that I am. And then I have colleagues that I work with that are more
the recovery.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think there's benefit to both, but I think my strength is being there in the trenches, dealing with things strategically to help the lawyers through the case and help them progress the case and to achieve the goals, like the actual divorce outcome that they're looking for. That's my mandate, is to help my client define exactly what their top must-haves are, make sure they're realistic with the help of a lawyer, like in a strategy call, and then we have to just go after them. And the route isn't always linear. Like sometimes we take a route and we hit an obstacle, and like my clients get all deflated. They had a motion in court and it didn't go the way they wanted. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, we just reroute. We do a little pivot. It's like when you hit a red light when you're going for groceries. Do you not go for the groceries? Like you hit construction, you still got to get the groceries, right? So same idea, like in getting the goals and keeping them super committed to the process. That's what I do.
So does it ever happen though, because you're coaching them and, you know, okay, so what are your negotiables, what are your non-negotiables, and so on and so on and so on, that the client almost treats you like the lawyer now? And so what do you think my chances are of getting this?
It happens 100% of the time.
And you can't advise.
No. And like, really, nobody has a crystal ball, right? Like, not even the lawyer. So this is the way I handle it. Like, when people make goals, they're really making decisions, right, of what's important to them. Mm-hmm. And I always say to my clients, like your reasons. Like, when you make a decision, like let's say your ex is asking you for, I have a client who was on my Facebook page, said her ex wants to take the 6-year-old out of school for a week for a vacation. She doesn't want it. She's not comfortable with it. The girl's just getting back into school and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what's the drama here? It's a no. Like,
yeah,
I don't think that's the right thing for my child. Well, he's going to be upset. Yes. But if you like your reasons for your no, and she did like her reasons, it was when the reasons are child-centered, it's very easy. There's always going to be somebody disappointed on the back end of a decision. Better it's your ex than you and your child, right?
Exactly.
But, yeah, a lot of people will make decisions to keep the temperature down. They think that will, they'll acquiesce and that'll keep the ex okay. Yeah. But the truth is, with a high conflict ex, nothing does. So make the decision where you like your reasons.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah. When the ex is high conflict, nice does not work.
Yeah.
You know, and it goes against everything that we're taught. Like, if you treat people well, they'll treat you well. If you're nice to people, they'll be nice to you back.
Yeah.
It's a game.
Yeah.
For a I just look at it, it's a game for them.
Yeah, you're so good at that game too. Mm. You get it.
Mm-hmm. And you have to, I think, decide what are the most important things to you. This is what I tell my clients, because the high conflict person is going to fight you on everything.
Right.
So you're going to have to decide what battles you're just going to throw in the towel because they're not worth, fighting. Pick the ones you want.
Yeah.
And that, sometimes there is no amount of money you can put on peace. So, while I don't encourage people to walk away necessarily from things they're entitled to, there comes a point where if it's causing so much stress to your life and misery, and it's going on year after year after year, there's no shame in settling for less than legally you might have been able to get. Yeah. And moving on with your life and having peace and happiness.
And you totally have to, agree. Again, you would have to, instead of thinking it as being less than what I should, there's that word again, should have, it's like liking your reasons. I value my sanity, I value my health and well-being, I value how I show up as a parent. So I'm deliberately choosing this, and I like my reasons for doing so.
Exactly.
It's much more empowering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's throwing good money after bad. So sometimes, is this really a win in the long run?
Oh, that's very
Exactly.
true.
Exactly.
You know, well, I won. Well, it cost
What
me
did you win?
100,000. I got
Yeah.
5,000 back. Like, what?
Yeah, and lost 5 years of your life to the stress, you know, like, is that really a win?
It's not a win.
Exactly. So I think when I help clients at like the very start of my process is I sort of do, especially if we're finding new counsel, I do like a timeline of the marriage and of the separation, all of the events that have happened, birth of kids, houses bought, everything all in one place. And then we define their goals. And I think that the goals should never change through the whole process. Like if they are the right goals, I know for me, I had 3 goals through right at the very beginning, and it never ended for the 4 years.
Can we ask what they were?
Of course. My goal was to have like full decision making in residential for my son. My second goal was to have a restraining order in effect. And my third goal was to not have to pay him anything.
Oh, those are great goals.
They were really good, and I got all 3 of them. I have a restraining order for life, which is very unusual. Of course, that didn't happen in trial. You couldn't get something like that. But again, using the pain points that you know when you're in the when they're finally in a negotiating position, which for a high conflict person, you really have to, I think, apply a lot of pressure before they will come to the table and negotiate. But when you have exerted that pressure and they know that they are at high risk, and for a lot of these high conflict people, that's either their pain point is either money or persona, like public persona.
Yeah, their image.
Exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The narcissistic qualities.
Right.
Exactly.
I find that's pretty uniform. So when they're at risk of being exposed, in the situation of a trial or being financially exposed, then you've applied enough pressure to bring them to the negotiating table. That's where you pull out those must-haves and you can figure out what their must-have is usually. A lot of them, it will be like the house where they are with the girlfriend or, you know, and you hang on to that until you get what you need.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank
Keeping
you
it
so
in the back
much.
pocket.
So fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's
Pleasure.
been really informative.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime, we'll have you back.
For sure.
I'm Jennifer Barkin,
And I'm Leanne Townsend.
and thank you for joining us on today's episode of The Dish on Divorce.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.